determined to topple the government. Protesters in Thailand rally against the Prime Minister. It is raising fears of a new chapter of political instability and fueling concerns about the economy. This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Jane Dutton. Thailand's Prime Minister is coming under increasing pressure in Parliament and on the streets. Yingluck Shinawatra is facing a vote of no confidence from members of Parliament and calls from protesters to step down. Yingluck is the sister of the former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, who's been living in exile since being convicted of corruption. Protesters argue he is still effectively running the country and using his sister as a puppet prime minister. Tens of thousands of protesters have filled the streets of Bangkok. Demonstrators have occupied government ministries and surrounded other state buildings. Prime Minister Yingluck has used an emergency law to tighten security in the capital. The street protests are the biggest since 2010, when more than 90 people were killed in a military crackdown. But Yingluck has said the government will not use force against these latest demonstrations. She also defended her leadership.
I insist there is only one cabinet with me as the Prime Minister. There are some accusations that I lack independence and that I lack intelligence and have to be controlled by pushing a button. I have to say, have I not been independent in the past 2 years that I administered the country as the head of government, which all of you may have learnt while we went through all those crises?
We will talk more about this with our panel in a moment, but first Florence Loy has more from the Thai capital.
We're at the Finance Ministry, where protesters have been camped out since Monday. Now, they're showing no signs of leaving. Many people, in fact, have brought provisions of food and water enough to last them several days. Protest has gained in momentum, with protesters taking over the Interior Ministry on Tuesday. Now, there are also groups that marched to other ministries like the Agriculture, Tourism and Sports ministries. And we also understand that protesters gathered outside the Prime Minister's residence itself. Now, the police have sought an arrest warrant for one of the top protest leaders, Mr. Suthep Thaoksuban. They've also said they will try to come to the Finance Ministry, where Mr. Suthep is, to persuade protesters to leave. There are many people here who worry that this protest could turn violent, just as it did in 2010, when the army cracked down on the protests ordered by the government, and it resulted in the deaths of more than 90 civilians. Now, nobody wants to see that happen again, but the protesters have vowed that they want to see an end to this government. They want Yingluck Shinawatra out of power, and they're using every means possible. Now, there's also a 2-day debate of no confidence going on in Parliament, which was brought by the opposition. But Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra is expected to win that debate easily, win that vote easily, because her party commands a comfortable majority in Parliament. Let's bring in our guests then. In Bangkok, Kriengsak Chareonwongsak, Senior Fellow at Harvard University and a former Member of Parliament for the Democrat Party. Joining us from Zurich is Rajiv Biswas, Asia Pacific Chief Economist for IHS Global Insight. And also in the Thai capital, we have Supong Limtanakool, Chairman of Strategic Studies at Bangkok University. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen. Kriengsak Chareonwongsak, let me come to you first and get a sense from you on what's happening with these demonstrations and what is it that you're seeing on the streets of Bangkok?
This is a result of the culmination of many years now of this conflict that is dividing Thailand right in the middle in every single arenas and domains. And I think this is the show of force from the opposition, who would like to dislodge this present government and the relationship with the former Prime Minister. So I think this is come to a culmination of some sort.
And we seem to be seeing a change in dynamics on the streets, aren't we?
You notice that in the Parliament, because of the small number of MPs from the opposition, it's almost impossible to undo the government, and therefore the street protest has been used these days and has been in the past few years as another parallel means to trying to influence the public on the ideas of how to bring down the government. And therefore, because of the conflict is so deep and the balance of power, both sides are almost equal when you take everything into consideration. And therefore, this is what you're seeing, a display of this conflict spill out from the formal politics in parliament onto the street.
Supong, do you support what is happening on the streets, and do you think there is enough going on there to bring down the government?
The situation is very, very fluid right now. I think there are two major reasons. One is the steamroller process that the government passed the blanket amnesty bill 4:30 a.m. in the morning. And also, secondly, the process of selecting the senators have been changed, and it has been challenged in the Constitutional Court, in which the Constitutional Court said that it is illegal to do so. So, as a matter of fact, I think it creates a vacuum of confidence from the Thai public that since the court said that the Constitution amendment was unconstitutional, the government lost its legitimacy as the leader of the population of Thailand. And the street protests, as we see now in Bangkok, in progress, is because people are very angry at the blanket amnesty that will let go 25,000 cases, of which it will cost Thailand taxpayers more than $5 billion US.
But what is it that they ultimately want? I mean, the government was elected, so what is their end game here?
The end game is very, very unpredictable. If the government decide that they are going to use the velvet glove, they should right now call for dissolve of the parliament and let things cool down for 90 days, 120 days for a re-election, so people can cool down and think and find some solution mutually acceptable for both parties. If they start to use force by using police, people will get hurt and maybe will get killed, and it will get out of hand again. It might repeat the situation of 2010, which we don't want to see.
Kriengsak, talk us about the security situation on the ground. Yenlak said that she's very reluctant to use force, but when do you think the military will be forced to take sides, if it ever reaches that point?
I would say the lesson has been learned by all political parties that force and crackdown and death because of the people who are protesting can bring harm to the government itself and those who order this crackdown. Therefore, I think they sincerely do not want to see a confrontation of that nature. But if the continual protest is going on with huge number of people like this occupying various state buildings, it could be accidentally when you try to disperse the crowd somehow, because the government have to allow the civil servants to function. And if all the buildings are occupied in many ministries, and right now at least 8 ministries are being occupied, therefore the government would have to disperse them somehow, hopefully peacefully, with all kinds of technology to dispel them. And hopefully nothing will happen with a third hand creating some violence or some unplanned confrontation that may bring about some nasty conflict that would bring hurts to the people on the streets. And if there's a big clash and people die, for example, in some measure, the military may have to come out to try to calm the situation. But I doubt that the military would like to do anything like a coup d'etat this time. They have learned the lesson, and I have severe doubt that the military would like to do anything of that nature. They may need to be called upon to come out to calm the situation if two sides are in physical fight.
Okay, well, I mean, that's certainly good to hear that you don't believe that there's any chance of a coup d'etat. But let me just put this to you. More than a dozen countries have already issued travel warnings. They're saying that people shouldn't travel to Thailand because there are security concerns. I mean, the tourism industry obviously is not an industry that you'd want to mess with. It's very important to Thailand.
Yes, it is very important. I know that the normal warning from every embassies, the 12 in total you said, is normal. But in fact, it hardly affects anybody here. In that sense, the foreigners are safe and quite secure. Of course, if there is a conflict, it will be a very brief one, I think, this time. It will not be a long, drawn-out one, at least in that violent conflict, if it ever erupts. Therefore, I think the tourists need not worry so much. It's confined. We have done it enough here to know how to do it properly so that it only concerns those who are right at that place where the confrontation is happening. So I think, every embassy is issuing warning is normal, but I think it will be an overreaction. But of course, it will affect our tourism. When you warn people like that, it affects somewhat our tourism. But I see the numbers of those who are turning up in Thailand this year is still very steadily increasing, and a huge number, 22 million people visiting Thailand this year. And I think it's rare that we're going to see that it will hurt our industry that badly, because I doubt that this whole thing would last too long.
Well, the tourists appear to still be going, but there is no doubt that Thailand's economy has suffered this year. There are concerns the current political crisis could hurt it still further. The economy slowed to 2.7% growth in the third quarter, compared to 5.4% at the beginning of the year. The government has blamed a drop in the number of cars being sold. But there's also been a slowdown in construction and global demand for Thai products. Thailand has now cut its projected GDP growth rate for 2013 from between 3.8 and 4.3% predicted in August to 3%. Well, let's bring in our economy guest from Zurich, Rajiv Biswas. What do you make of the economic impact of the politics under play at the moment in Thailand and what we're seeing on the streets?
Well, we had been seeing a stabilization in the last year or so, but this has reopened a lot of the old wounds. The deep political divisions are coming to the forefront, and the victim is the Thai economy. Fundamentally, the Thai economy is actually a very strong economy and has been very well managed by the government until recently, I would say. But now there's obviously a lot of threat to the tourism sector. Clearly, protests in Bangkok are going to be very disruptive to tourism, especially if governments are warning against visiting Thailand. And the disruptions that we're seeing in the protests in Bangkok will discourage, I think, many tourists from visiting until the situation stabilizes. What's unclear is the length of time it's going to take for this situation to stabilize. It could actually deteriorate further from here and could continue for some months. So the risks are increasing that protests will affect the tourism industry. It's about 7% of Thai GDP. And it's happening at a time when other exports have been weakening, particularly the rice exports, which are very, very important for Thailand, have been badly affected by the government's subsidy program.
Devastating subsidies.
It's made Thai rice very expensive on markets.
How much is it taking away, excuse me, jumping in here, how much is it taking away Thailand's competitive edge?
Well, in the rice market, the subsidies have significantly eroded Thai competitiveness. Thailand used to be the world's largest rice exporter, but now its position has been largely eroded, and other competitors in the region are challenging Thailand. And as long as the subsidies continue, that will the Thai situation will continue to deteriorate, and at a very high fiscal cost to the Thai government as well. But the farmers are now very used to the subsidies, and therefore it's very hard for the government to wean them off this subsidy program. And that's why tourism, is now a threat as well now. If tourism incomes are hit by the protests, that's a double blow to the export economy of Thailand. And another problem that's coming up is the eroding fiscal deficit due to the very large infrastructure program that the government has planned for many large mega projects in infrastructure development. So the fiscal dynamics are looking also very ugly. So the combination of weakening exports and the deteriorating outlook for the fiscal position are really creating, I think, risks for the medium-term outlook for Thailand, and could start to worry international investors.
Supong, do you agree with that? Is Thailand set on economic suicide?
I agree, because a lot of things is happening in Thailand, and the problem is we can no longer trust the official figure of this government. There has been a lot of white lies, as admitted by the Minister of Finance. We have received some information that the inflation is only 1% in Thailand, but it is not so. And we have received a lot of false information from the Government Bureau of Statistics, which confuse the people even more. Tourism is our main foreign exchange earner right now, but with this situation, a lot of tourists will be a little bit hesitant of coming to Thailand. This is the peak season, but it will reflect in the first quarter of next year. So the fourth quarter will not be affected, and I hope that the situation will proceed in a peaceful manner, and the settlement is quick.
Kriengsak, Rajiv brought up the farmers and the subsidies which have crippled the economy, but the farmers clearly are still very important to the political players, the Shinawats.
Yes, the rural areas are very much dominated by the farming sector, and therefore, and there are large organized voters base. And therefore, it's very important for any political party to capture those votes to win. In the north, in the northeast, are full of huge, numerous numbers of farmers and rural people. Therefore, any party that captures that will always have a high chance to win. With that kind of thing in mind, it's very difficult for any political party not to think about that. The previous government also, from another party, from Democrat, also used another scheme, another rice kind of guarantee scheme, but not as terribly managed as this one with rice pledging scheme. As being well said, I agree that I think this whole thing, or this whole drama of trying to play with voter base through all these subsidies is devastation for the entire future of exporting rice. And I think it's going to be very difficult to recuperate if nothing is done fast to reverse the policy, and we need to come back to sensibility soon. But anyway, with those things in mind, there's another factor also that show out that make the Thai economy not doing as well as it should be. That would be the world economy, which we are dependent badly in terms of our export. Because we are export-led economy, and we need the world market to absorb our goods, and also investment-led economy like we are, we also need a lot of people, continual investment that come in. Therefore, the political climate, as it is today, if it live out in a longer term and not stabilizing soon, it could affect us badly. But I doubt that we'll play it out in a long term, because the opposition have no ability to keep and sustain the protest for a long time. That's why they already announced that it has to be done within the end of this month, very quickly.
Sure. Now, Thailand has been hit by years of political unrest. That's pretty evident from how the guests have been talking, with protests against whoever has been in power. We can trace the latest turmoil back to 2006. Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra was overthrown in a military coup in September that year while he was out of the country. His Thai Rak Thai party was banned, but in December 2007, a reincarnation of that party, the People Power Party, won the most votes in a general election. Thaksin was charged with corruption in August 2008 and fled the country for London. He was later sentenced to 2 years in jail in his absence. 2008 had 3 prime ministers in 3 months, and that led to yet more protests. The worst lasted from March to May in 2010. Soldiers eventually broke up the crowds of Thaksin supporters wearing their trademark red shirts. 91 people were killed. The pro-Thaksin Pheu Thai party won a landslide victory in elections the following year, and Thaksin's sister Yingluck Shinawatra became prime minister. This year has been tough for her. She tried unsuccessfully to change the 2007 post-coup constitution and triggered the latest protest by trying to push through an amnesty bill that would have allowed her brother Thaksin to return to Thailand without facing jail. I mean, Supong, it still defies belief, doesn't it, that she would even consider giving amnesty to those people who basically killed her supporters. I mean, she can't be surprised that so many people have turned against her.
Yes, definitely. And I think it's the overconfidence in the part of Thaksin, because his close aides have announced publicly that he went to Dubai and presented Thaksin with 7 versions of the amnesty bill, and Thaksin chose this one, which will give total amnesty to both corruption, extrajudicial killings of the drug dealers, and also the death of the Muslim South, about 150 people in Kruse and Takbai, which started the violence in the South. And also it will move up front until the August of this year to pardon the rice scheme corruption charges, which the government still cannot come up with a figure of how much we have already spent, which is estimated to be about 400 billion baht, yes.
Kriengsak Chareonwongsak is waiting on a no-confidence vote in Parliament, but she's also said that she's happy to sit down with the opposition. What is it that she can say?
It's very tough for both sides to negotiate, because first, there's no mediator that is acceptable for both sides. They have polarized the entire country until no one is left in the middle to do that job of mediator. Number 2, both sides take everything in consideration, have almost equal balance of power, and usually negotiation cannot happen unless you believe that you're weakened in your position of bargaining. And because of both sides think both can win, it's very difficult. And the stakes are very high. Whoever took the reign of leadership after this, the other side may think there will be sidelines, they will be punished, there will be repercussion on them. And the stake is so high at this moment of history that I doubt there is a possibility for a real conversation. But I do believe there must be, with some wisdom, behind the scene attempt to try to negotiate and talk and to bargain. And I think the best solution would be to bargain behind the scene what can be the new government that look like both sides acceptable, neutral people that come forward that is acceptable, that both sides will feel comfortable with, and come forward with some constitutional mean that is legal, that is obeying the rule of law, and something that is within the confine of the present constitution, that it will pacify every side so that we go back to a life of normality.
Rajiv, what do you think Thailand needs to do now, the economists, the politicians, in order for it not to be left behind?
I would say Thailand would truly have to get our act together. We need. You're talking to me?
No, Rajiv, if you can answer that, please.
So, yeah, I think we need a reconciliation, and this definitely needs some clear thinking minds from both sides to come together to perhaps form a caretaker government that will serve in the best interests of Thailand. Because fundamentally, this is a strong economy. Thailand's economy is fundamentally one of the world's most competitive. It's ranked 18th by the World Bank in terms of ease of doing business. Investors up to now have been very fond of investing into the Thai economy, in the auto sector, in chemicals and electronics, because of its global competitiveness. So it has a lot of strengths, but of course the political climate is now damaging a lot of the momentum for the economy. So we do need to see a better way forward. And I think, although it doesn't seem to be on the horizon, the best path would be a caretaker government that's focused on reconciliation. It's not going to be an easy path, It's going to take some time, but that's what's needed because this is one of the biggest economies in ASEAN.
Okay, well,
it's
thank you for taking us down that path. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for talking through this interesting time in Thailand. Thanks to Kriengsak Chareonwongsak, and in Zurich, Rajiv Biswas, and also in the Thai capital, Supong Limtanakool. A reminder that you can find this program and many more at aljazeera.com. Just follow the links for shows and inside story. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Jane Dutton. Bye-bye.